such quality books from a civil servant. Congratulations to you, sir, for amazing books, and it's a worth reading book for everybody. And among my teachers, almost everybody is having this book. So basically, this is an idea that how you can work with certain kind of difficulties, certain kind of contradictions, and yet you come out with the great flying colors and with the greatest distinction in every field. You have worked in various ministries, mainly coal and education, and these two have a rare combination, which I will ask you some other time. So in the beginning, I will request Mr. Hassan Kuni, MP, to welcome. But before that, I would like to introduce to all the audience, Dr. Hassan Kuni, MP, is the president of Ideal Indian School, Doha-Qatar. He's a leader par excellence, always consider Ideal Indian School as his topmost priority. Dr. Hassan Kuni is unique epitome of pragmatic action, dynamic vision, and unwavering determination. He truly deserves all the accolades bestowed upon him. It is his sheer ability to explore the terrains of excellence that has helped him to attain a praiseworthy distinction in the community. Dr. Hassan Kuni, being the president of IIS, always takes initiatives to ensure an ideal learning environment and ambience for students to develop their skills to meet the challenges of the global environment. He has excellent understanding of the new national education policy of India and strongly believes that the new policy will take India to pinnacle of success. Dr. Hassan Kuni, I have visited IIS and I was so much impressed with the infrastructure and all the facilities what you have. And I'm quite sure, like the amazing past, the school has an amazing future. So over to you, sir, for the welcome address.
Thank you, Sharmaji, for your nice words, very encouraging words. Of course, it's my passion to be in Ideal Indian School as president. And I'm very lucky to have a principal like Mr. Shaukat Ali. He is very committed and a hardworking gentleman. Thank you, Mr. Shaukat Ali. Education is an empowering process that guides students to develop the passion, skills, critical thinking, compassion, and wisdom for timely action. Since the schools and teachers play a vital role in students' life, they should adopt best and constructive way to enhance the standards of education so that there will be a paradigm shift in the present scenario. Teachers have to update themselves to keep pace with the rapid advancements in knowledge and technology. We need proper and well-informed mentors to accomplish that objective. It is indeed a great honor and a privilege for me to welcome such an exponent to the webinar, Mr. Anil Swarup. Former Education Secretary, Government of India. He holds a master's degree in political science from Allahabad University and is the founder chairman of Nexus of Good, an initiative towards recognizing positive action and providing inspiration to the society at large to replicate them. Mr. Anil Swarup possesses a commendable track record of laurels. He was awarded the Chancellor's Gold Medal for being the best all-round student. He served the Indian Police Service in 1981. He won the Director's Gold Medal for the best officer training. Mr. Anil Swarup had successfully served the Government of India as Secretary in the Ministry of Coal. Thereafter, he served Government of India as Educational Secretary for the Department of School Education and Literacy, where he attempted to foster public-private partnership to improve the quality of school education. During his remarkable career spanning 38 years, Mr. Anil Swarup attempted to make it happen as a strategic thinker and an innovative leader. He won several awards and nominations. He was nominated as one of the policy change agents by the Economics Times for many years. He was selected as one of the 35 action heroes in India Today, 35th annual edition. Mr. Anil Swarup is also the author of the bestseller, Not Just a Civil Servant. He is also shown for his book titled ethical dilemmas of a civil servant. He is an inspiration to all of us. I wholeheartedly welcome Mr. Anil Swarup to this much awaited webinar. Mr. Anil Swarup will enlighten us on the topic, New Education Policy 2020, Mr. Anil Swarup. I'm extremely happy to extend a warm welcome to all principals, vice principals, headmasters, headmistresses, and teachers who are attending the webinar through Zoom or watching the webinar either through Facebook or YouTube. In all aspects, it will be an inspirational webinar to all the participants. I once again welcome you all this stupendous event. I strongly anticipate that this session will be a productive one. We all can explore his vast knowledge and utilize it to become more resourceful. Thank you very much. And Mr. Anil Swarup, we welcome you to the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hassan Kuni. It was very wonderful, well-knitted address, as well as the introduction, very aptly given for Mr. Anil Swarup. Yet the words are less. The kind of the aroma he's having, the kind of the surroundings he's having is amazing, because I got to connect him through nexus of good, and nexus of good is really a nexus of good. And this was one thing, particularly during the 2019, 20, and 18, even rather. At that time, there were so many negative news which used to come in newspapers and everywhere, and people used to feel so much stressed and used to feel that this world is worst. However, there was nexus of good. There was hope of light, and amazingly, this nexus of good is doing great work. And we see every week or almost every month, he comes up with young, great leaders who are in civil services or other services, and then he's talking to them and bringing and inspiring them. That is amazing work. And he could have been a governor or could have been a chairman of a big corporation here or there after retirement, but he picked up this field to inspire the younger generation, teachers and principals. Sir, kudos to you. It is really great. And I can recollect all the reforms in Cbse started during your time. You took that particular situation when the Cbse was in trouble, and you brought it out, and whatever good work is going on Cbse, and of course in this national education policy also, the seeds with Mr. Kasturi Ranjan were shown by the people, the main core team. You were one of the members. So I would like to open for the discussion, just initial thought, why it was required this point of time after 1986 and 1992 to just change everything. Instead of overhauling, change everything. Thank you so much, sir. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm extremely, extremely thankful for those very kind words, Mr. Sharma. It's always been a pleasure to be amidst you all. I recall the fabulous time that I spent at Bangalore when you had that conference there. I enjoyed every moment of it. I stayed there for more than a day to be with all of you and felt inspired myself. So thank you very much. Before I come to the policy, let me give you a bit of a background of how I got into this whole business and what was my perception of education before I come into the policy, and what parts of those perception form a part of this policy. Before I became education secretary, I was posted as coal secretary. At that point in time, I didn't know much about coal, but it was in a total mess. Scams had happened. So since I didn't know much about the sector, I rang up a friend of mine to ask him, how is this sector? So his response was by way of a question. He asked me, have you seen gangs of Wasipur? So that actually epitomized the state of affairs in the coal sector. By God's grace and on account of an absolutely amazing team that I had, one could get over the crisis that the coal sector had, bring it down to normalcy. And then I got posted as school education secretary. Now, I must confess that I had absolutely no idea of school education except my own school education, because I had never had any experience in this sector. I was myself surprised why I was posted as school education secretary. So this word went around that here is an illiterate, ignorant, uneducated person as the school education secretary. So obviously, there are very friendly people around. There were many advisors who came down from all over the world to advise me on how to handle school education. And I was a bit surprised at the advice that was being given to me. The advice that was being given to me was that you must look at England, Finland, Holland, Scotland, New Zealand, all the lands of the world. And I jokingly asked one of the advisors who came down all the way from the US, I asked him, have you seen the motherland? He didn't understand the question. I told him we should first look at the ground reality within the country and then see in terms of how could we improve things. In fact, when the policy was being formulated, that's precisely I had told Dr. Rangarajan that the committee should first try and assess the ground reality. You know, most of us believe that all wisdom resides in Delhi. It doesn't. Actually, there's a lot of wisdom around the country and maybe around the world. But we have to understand the ground reality. So what I did was I traveled to 24 states in the first 3 months as school education secretary. It was unprecedented. No secretary traveled so much. I got into this habit as school secretary and I continued with education. And when I say that I traveled to states, I not merely went to state headquarters. The first two districts that I visited were Bastar and Sukma in Chhattisgarh district, in Chhattisgarh state. And then I traveled from Pune to Goa, dropping down on the way to look at the schools. I traveled from Srinagar to Leh, not taking the national highway, going deep inside mountains to understand the ground reality of school education. And I discovered that a lot of good work is happening in school education. And that should get replicated and scaled. In fact, the idea of Nexus of Good came then, where I discovered a lot of good work happening. In the meanwhile, I also understood the problems in school education. And I have written that in my book, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant, a full chapter on mafias of school education. And those mafias relate to a variety of activities in school. In fact, after 2 months, someone asked me, how do you find school sector? I said in coal, the mining was underground and the mafia was overground. In education, it's the other way around. All the mafias are underground, eating into the essentials of Indian society. And they are damaging it so much that we don't even realize, like termites, I've used the word, that eating into the essentials and weakening the whole social system. And in those mafias, I had laid emphasis on the mafias relating to teachers. To me, teachers lie at the pivot of school education. If we are unable to sort out the issues related to teacher, no matter what we discuss or what we talk, education will remain where it is. So what I try to understand what has happened and what has not happened. I think in an article or in a chapter in the book I've written that in this country, we have managed to get the child to the school. Somehow we have created some infrastructure, but the quality of education remains a lot to be desired. And why is it that? It is because of the teacher. Why is it because of the teacher? Because look at the education of teachers before they get into service. We have 16,000 B.Ed and D.Ed colleges. 4,000 of them do not exist. They are just on paper. And they can give you a degree. Imagine what will this teacher do when he becomes a teacher, which they do become teachers. And there is a full separate chapter on this issue of the mafia of B.Ed and D.Ed colleges, which I consider as the biggest mafia. I'm so glad that the education policy addresses some of these aspects. This is one aspect, and I'll come to it at length. The second aspect is the selection of teachers to government jobs. You know, it's a racket here. I don't know whether you're aware that one of the former chief ministers is behind the bars for this racket. So imagine a teacher who's not appropriately trained and somehow becomes a government school teacher. What is going on? He can't obviously teach, and that's why you have poor quality of education. So having understood, and this gets laid down, when Dr. Kasturi Rangan met me, my first reaction was, don't waste your time in formulating a policy, because India does not need too many policies. What India needs is an action plan. What needs to be done, how it will be done, who will do it, by when it will be done. And this is important because the action plan will have to relate to each state separately. You can't have a single dimension for everything in India. You know, India is very diverse. So you can't, sitting in Delhi, decide for everyone. And I'm glad that the policy does not mandate anything. I mean, all the provisions of the policy will have to be followed by an executive order. And there are more suggestions than mandates in the policy. So apprehensions of the people can actually be addressed. And as we go along, we'll discuss certain aspects of the policies. There are apprehensions, but policy is merely giving a direction. Now, I look at policy at two different levels. And I'll soon conclude because I'd like to interact with all of you. One is at the conceptual level, the other at the operational level. At the conceptual level, I think it's a fantastic policy. Anything that you can think of in school education is there. It's right there. And they've tried to identify the right problems like teachers, early childhood education. All these are very nice, good suggestions and ideas which have been put in the policies and reasonably detailed. The problem that I had at the conceptual level is only twofold. One is in the context of not treating private sector in the manner it should. I mean, the policy does not recognize the fact that 50% of the children go to private schools in India. Only 50% go to government schools. Yet 90% of the policy is just, or 95% of the policy, it just doesn't even mention the private sector. It's only in the end that it talks through a passing reference and then holds a position which India has been holding for a long time for discouraging profit-making schools. I mean, my personal view was they should have allowed profit in the school. What is wrong in it? In fact, the fact of the matter is, one of the mafias that I have mentioned in the book is private schools. And some of them are acting like mafias because others are not allowed to get in. And because of those handful of mafias or handful of people, the whole private sector is getting a mad name, especially in the context of school fee. Now, it has become such a topic of discussion that everyone thinks that these private schools are fleecing. This is not true. It may be true of some schools, but by and large, schools are not fleecing the children. Now, this aspect gets totally ignored. That is one. The second conceptual problem that I have with the policy is that there is a lot of work that the non-governmental organizations are doing. They've just been touched. They could have leveraged that. But apart from these two issues relating to private sector and public-private partnership, I think policy is very good. The problem will come in terms of implementing the policy. That's where the real problem is. I'll stop here. What I'll do is, while I answer your questions, I'll look at some of the operational issues of the policy. I would believe that a lot of it can happen because policy does have some fabulous provisions, but there are certain areas which are a bit of a cause of concern in terms of application, because it's very easy to give idea in a country like India. Almost everyone has a solution to a problem. But for an idea to fructify and sustain, and listen to this very carefully, it has to be politically acceptable, socially desirable, technologically feasible, financially viable, administratively doable, and judicially tenable. Now, this policy holds very good in terms of political acceptability. The policy has already been passed by the cabinet, so it's politically acceptable. It is socially desirable because the provisions mentioned therein are eminently desirable. The third part is, in terms of technology, I don't see any problem. But as you go into the fourth one, I run into a problem. Where is the money? The policy talks in terms of providing 6% of GDP to education. This was said by Kothari long ago. Decades ago, he said 6%. But that 6% is not coming. If this 6% doesn't come, then we are in trouble, because most of the suggestions of the policy cannot be implemented. I hope that 6% comes, though I have a bit of a doubt, having been Secretary of Education, having seen what is the approach towards allocation of money. I would think that it would be difficult. I will stop here because I can go on and on education policy, but I would like to have a conversation and respond to the questions that you have, then go on a monologue. Thank you very much.
Yes, so this is true that it is very correct that not all private schools are bad. There are many private schools, they are doing great work. And actually, in India, if the level of education has improved, then partly because of private schools, and there is a good sector of government schools also, like KVs, and particularly those particular schools, JNV, Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya and all, they are doing amazing. And there are few schools in Delhi also, which are meant for special students and good students. So the good work is being done there, and you very correctly said the implementation. Now there is one very interesting question.
One minute, Sharma sir. I just want to share one thing to Anil Swarup sir. Sir, our ideal Indian school is non-profit organization, and nobody is taking profit here. And whatever money we are generating from the fees, we are spending on students only. So I'm glad to share this. And our president sir, who is here, he spends money from his own packet for the school, and he never takes one single penny from the school. And nobody is taking money from the school, sir. And we are glad that our school is one of the best schools in Doha, and it is a premier institution. And from 36 years, we are serving the community, and we have produced best results till now. The first question which I saw in the Q&A session, sir, Education Policy 2020 tells about using technology in the classroom. Seeing today's environment, where every child, when the small child comes for admission, we'll see he'll have mobile in his hand. So there was few queries which has been asked, or which are asked continuously by few doctors as well as few parents who are really concerned about children well-being. The first question they are asking is, government is telling, policy is telling to use technology everywhere in the classroom. how it will impact on the adverse effect of the health of the child, especially young kids, where their nervous system will be growing and eyes are little mild enough. So they are very, very mild. They can't go on seeing the screens. How it will affect on the health of the children? This is the first question which was asked in the Q&A also.
Okay, let me try and answer this question because it's very critical, because everyone is talking of technology and we cannot duck or avoid technology. To my personal understanding, technology can be a great enabler. It can make education an interesting affair, an enjoyable affair. I distinctly remember when I was a student myself, I was fortunate to have very good teachers, but there were a couple of teachers whose class I used to find it very difficult to sit for 2 hours or hours. It was very difficult. Now, what technology does is it can make the learning easier and it can be made enjoyable. I found it very difficult to understand Archimedes' principle when I was a kid, but later on, now someone showed me a 2-minute video on Archimedes' principle and I understood it like this. So the problem per se is not with technology. Technology is helpful. The point is the manner in which technology is being used. Now, if the child is hooked on to something else, if you don't come out with some alternative for him to be hooked on, I can guarantee you, whether the education policy talks about technology or not, the child will still be hooked on to that telephone. It is not because of technology, because of education policy that he is hooked on to telephone. It is not because the emphasis on technology that he is hooked on to telephone. It is available. Now, even if you don't have technology in education policy or in the schools, the child will still be hooked onto the telephone. So the best is make use of his hooking onto the phone or a gadget to teach him something. So make use of that. Only you can't only wish. I mean, you would wish that he doesn't look at the telephone. But technology came. I mean, education-related technology has come very recently. This technology of a telephone was there for a long time. Did it not impact the child then? It did. So what do? You divert the child from something what he is seeing right now to something which is more useful. So use technology positively. You can't duck technology. If you think that you will be able to prevent the child from looking at the phone, from looking at the laptop, you can forget it, because he will somehow find a way to look at the phone and the laptop. The challenge is that since he is already using technology, use that technology to make him learn, to make him improve. I'm saying that because I have grandchildren who are 6 and 7 years of age. They want to watch television all the time. Now in COVID times, only television. So what do? What we are trying to do is, can I ask them to switch over to more educational videos, which is fun and learning, rather than only watching some stupid things on the television or telephone. So my request to all of you is, don't try and duck technology. Don't avoid technology. Use technology for a positive purpose.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Shaukatji. The good question. My question was very interesting, sir. Actually, during your time when you were studying and even when we were studying, the highest marks in class 10th and 12th, the merit holders used to get 65%, 75%, and there was a concept of good second division. People used to distribute sweets for good second division. Now the whole education policy went in a mess because of this competition of boards, state boards, because education is a state subject. And when the NCF will come, the NCF will be very clear. But how different state boards will take it, that will be very difficult. Now children are getting 100%, and it is very difficult to make them understand that you are not perfect, because they think we are perfect and we know everything.
Sharmaji, you are absolutely correct. And this is a problem that I grappled with as Secretary of Education. There is a full chapter in my book which talks about the farce of spiking of marks. I call it farcical delusion, because I can't believe that a child can get 100 out of 100 in English literature. Shakespeare must be turning in his grave, because that's not possible, but they're getting it. Let us try and understand the reason behind it. And I'm glad that the policy addresses this issue. The reason is that for admission in Delhi University and good universities, the marks obtained in class 12 are the benchmark. That being the case, all the boards are competitively spiking the marks to enable the child to get admission in Delhi University. Now, the good news is, because I had a very strong point of view, I took some initiative, but for the High Court intervention, I think we could have taken care of that. But fortunately, the policy addresses this issue. How does it address? The policy says that these marks will not be considered for admission to university. There will be a separate entrance test to university. In one stroke, It does away this farcical system of marks, because then these marks will become redundant. It will be marks like marks in 6th, 7th, and 8th class. No one will talk about it. They don't have much of a value after some time. So in one stroke, this policy does away with that. So you are absolutely correct. In a number of ways, the policy is trying to understand the why of a problem, and they are planning to solve it. Now, coming to the second point of different boards, I am personally of the view that we should not push for a single board. What we should do is, a board like Cbse, which is improving by the day, should become good enough for people to come and join Cbse. It's the other way around. Normally in government, the approach is that you pass an order and force everyone to do everything. No, I'm not of that favor. I was convinced that Cbse has to improve, which they did. From 8,000 affiliations, today Cbse has more than 20,000 affiliations in just a few years. And there is an equal number of lists pending with them for affiliation, which means उन्होंने अपनी खुदी को बुलंद किया. That is why people are veering around to Cbse to get that. That is the way forward. Secondly, India again is a very diverse country. To push a central board to every state may not be appropriate. Let the state boards flourish, let them improve, let them compete, and let them come up. But this stupidity of farcical escalation of marks, I'm glad that the policy addresses it.
Yeah, Shaukat, your question.
Well, sir, thank you, sir. One after the other, we'll ask questions. There is one question from my fellow friend, Pramod Mahajan, principal of Sharjah Indian School. He tells that is NEP has scope to eliminate coaching mafias to be specific of quota model and all, if yes.
Okay, I am glad this question has been asked, because as Secretary School Education, I was grappling with this. Again, for finding solution to any problem, we must understand the why of that problem. Why does that problem exist? This, to my mind, exists because what is taught in class in 11 and 12 and what is asked in IIT entrance exam or medical exam is different. So the child has no option but to go to a coaching institute. Now, there are ways in which you can get rid of it. What are those ways? I don't know whether you're aware, there are examinations of CAT, SAT, and MAT. No, there aren't many coaching institutes for CAT, SAT, and MAT, because the nature of questions that are asked do not relate to your learning. It has more to do with your understanding. Once you switch from learning to understanding, I think these coaching institutes will vanish. I had suggested that earlier. The then Education Minister, Mr. Javadekar, had agreed with me, and we were working towards we had an interaction with some people in IITs also. Ask them, why can't you ask questions wherein he does not require coaching? You are looking at the fundamental understanding of the student rather than what he knows. So instead of testing knowledge, and that's what the policy talks about. The policy talks about competencies, not learnings. So that's where, if they work towards it, I'm sure they will be able to mitigate that, something that is happening. I totally agree with you. This is something of a racket, these coaching classes, and there can be a way in which they can be eliminated.
Sir, in another webinar, I was there and I was I took a poll on this 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, because what I understand, like in the last 1 decade, there was a lot of demand to make graduation of 4 years, and rather in DU it was done also, and after 1 year it was drawn back. So the point is here that just increasing 1 year in school education and increasing another year in graduation, it could have been like 4 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, or what is the reason behind that it's just increasing the number of years for a student in the total education?
No, let's understand first the philosophy behind it and then the number of it. I think the philosophy is perfect. What the policy is looking at is early childhood education. All researchers have clearly proved and demonstrated that the mind of the child gets made in the first 6-7 years. And we were not even attempting to intervene there. This policy lays phenomenal emphasis on preschool education, nursery, KG, which is very good. And that is why from 12 years, the school education has gone to 15 years. The 3 years that have been added is the 3 years before class 1. That's where the additional numbers come. And I think it's very, very essential, very important. It's a different matter that operationally there will be problems, but then they can be overcome over a period of time. But principally speaking, I think it's a fantastic way of looking at school education, because if you can somehow train the mind of the child in the early years, in the later years, it becomes easier. Comprehension, numeracy, all things become easier because the mind is made up. The second good thing that the policy does is the focus on not so much on learning. They have to learn, as they say. What they have to do is to develop their comprehension, their competencies, rather than merely mugging up things, rather than cracking the exam, as they call it. So I think it's a good effort in terms of increasing the numbers, but all these numbers are before class 1. We are talking of post-graduation. There, of course, post-class 12, there, of course, there could be other reasons. Since I have not delved into that area of higher education, I can't comment on it. I'm sure they must have good reasons for playing with this 3 years, 4 years. There must be some good reason to do it.
Thank you, sir. Sir, shall I ask? Yeah.
Yes.
There is one question from the audience here. Role of 21st century teachers for the students of age 3 to 10.
See, I think that's the future. That's how the future of this country is going to be built. What the policy talks about is getting a specialized teacher for this purpose. The usual normal teaching that happens from class 1 onwards will not work before that, because before class 1, you're not teaching them. You're not putting some knowledge in them. It's a different sort of an education that has to take place. And hence, these teachers will play an extremely important role in terms of formulation of the mind of the child. Because as I said, these are formative years, important for a child, because how the brain gets formulated around that time, it will impact his learning later on. So these teachers will have a very important role. Having said that, the government or the respective governments will have to come up with, training institutes where such teachers could be trained. Right now, we don't have. Right now, even normal teacher training is a bit of a problem. We are talking in terms of a specialized teacher for before class 1, that is up to age of 5 and 6. And thereafter, of course, we have teachers. But before class 1, we don't have training institutes to train sufficient number of teachers to train these children. The second would be in terms of migration from Anganwadi to this sort of education. Now, again, there will be operational problems. Because policy lays a lot of emphasis on Anganwadi workers. Now, all of us know what Anganwadi is. Some of them are doing a wonderful job, but most of them are working on an honorarium. And more often than not, they are on strike. These days also, they are on strike. Now, how do you expect this Anganwadi worker to impart that sort of a training to a child of that age? These are things which will have to be fleshed out, will have to be discussed. But certainly, as the person who's asked this question, I totally agree with him that these teachers will have an extremely, extremely important role to play in the future of education in this country.
There is another dilemma. The dilemma is that this 21st century, 20 years already gone. Still, we are talking about 21st century education, 21st century skills. And we do not know that by 2030, what kind of professions, what kind of challenges will be there, what kind of environment will be there. So are there a few certain kind of skills which will work? Because now I believe that this should not be like 21st century skills. This should be decade-wise skills or decade-wise educations and decade-wise policy, because this education policy will take another 30 years to get implemented in a proper spirit, and we will be bearing fruit after that only, very easily after 10 to 15 years. Now, what are the skills which will be universal, whatever decade we are talking in future?
See, first of all, Sharmaji, policy does not mean that till the next policy, nothing else will happen. Only this policy will be implemented. When the last policy came in the 80s, from then and now, enormous amount of work has happened and transformation has happened. Right to Education Act came, the attendance in school, out of school children came down dramatically. So it's not that we'll wait for another policy to change. I think this change happens frequently and normally. Now, coming to the skills that you're talking of, I think we are at present catching up. I mean, instead of looking at future, we are catching up. In what way? For example, the skills that are required today are usually not available here. So there is a hiatus between demand and supply. Secondly, because of an ethos of our country, wherein we had this hierarchy of science, commerce, arts, and vocational education, we ran into serious problems. So a child, when he couldn't do science, took commerce. When he couldn't do commerce, took arts subject. And then if he couldn't do anything, he came into vocational training. Now, if you look at the policy closely, they are doing away with this hierarchical distinction of all these. The child will be allowed to switch from one to the other. That flexibility is given. And secondly, vocational training or skilling has been put on the same pedestal as science. Now, this was started by Cbse at some point in time because they had these subjects on the same platform as science, arts, and commerce. But now the policy says it uniformly that skilling or vocational training will be on the same pedestal as any other subject. So, which I think is a very positive development. There will be many other things required in this context, in the sense of creating, as you rightly said, skilling in the context of the demand rather than skilling in the context of targets. Normally,
Yes.
what happens in our country, we fix target that so many people will be trained in this, so many people will be trained in this, and the demand is totally different. So since I have spent a lot of time in the industrial sector also, number of industrialists tell me, we don't have skilled people that you require. And we are skilling so many people. So meaning thereby that we are skilling people in something else which is not required. Now, some initiative has been taken in this regard because now they are doing survey of each district to determine the demand of skilled manpower in the next 5 to 10 years. And the training will be tuned to that. I discovered this when I was traveling to interior areas of the country. In Odisha, someone told me, Sir, aap sabko IT padha de rahe hain. You are teaching everybody information technology. Here we required people who can help at home, people in the hospitality sector. We don't require people who everyone runs a computer. Of course, they would be required, but not everyone should be done. So there was a fashion, everyone was learning, C++ and language and computer, whereas requirement may have been different. Secondly, we have to look at the capacity of the individual. Now, you train him in a manner that he doesn't get employment locally, so he travels to Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, where the salary that he gets is not good enough to survive. Now, suppose I train him for a unit that is close by, he can stay at home, earn a living, and live comfortably. So, I think skilling will have to be looked at it more intensely, but the policy gives it the right direction.
Yeah, Mr. Shaukat, questions from audience.
Thank you, sir. There is one question in education policy. According to education policy 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, education policy tells that before child coming to Anganwadi or preschool, the parent will be given training for parenting. So how it will happen and what are the modalities for this?
I also have this question myself. Yet so many things that the policy says, how will it happen? I mean, this will require money, this will require manpower, this will require a process. I'm sure that the mandarins and very competent officers in the school education department are going to work out the details. But I have my serious doubts about it. It is asking too much. Are you expecting teachers to do it? Because teachers are unable to teach. Will they be able to do it? So I have my serious doubts on how will, probably in urban areas, parents may be trained. But I'm talking of the hundreds and thousands of schools in rural areas. How do you teach? How do you train parents? I am unable to train teachers today. I'm talking but there's no harm in having this laudable objective of training the parents. No one will deny the fact that the parents will have to be not trained, so to say, but sensitized about how to handle a child. Unfortunately, it has not been done. Policy talks about it. As Dr. Kasturi Rangan says, let's take some few steps and see how it happens. We are also wishing that these aspects will be taken care of, but it's going to be tough for people who are going to execute it on the ground. I see another question here about vocational education. How will school do that? That's another practical problem. When I started my discussion, I said, one is at a conceptual level where you like everything in the policy. The moment you got down to operational level, you run into problems. So for vocational education, the problem could be that every school will have to create that infrastructure to enable that vocational training. Unlike other subjects where you can teach through books, here you have to have equipment. Now, what sort of equipment are you going to have? Because vocational training is not one line. There are a variety of things that you've got to do. Again, practical problems. Again, requirement of money. Again, requirement of infrastructure. My only way that I can think of is if they pump in 6% of GDP, probably money will be available to deliver this. Otherwise, we'll have serious problems in implementing many provisions of the policy. Not only this, many other provisions also.
That's a very nice answer, sir, because I was expecting this question to come up. Now, most interesting thing is, sir, that in India, unfortunately, being teacher is the last resort for many of the people. So people who are into education right now as a teacher, this would have been the last resort because after graduation and after post-graduation, they thought, okay, nothing we are getting. And I must salute all the teachers how during this COVID, they have changed and they have acclimatized themselves. They have adapted to the situations. They can do amazing work. So this is a terrible disguise, blessing in disguise during this pandemic. So the point is, don't you think like in different countries, like if we are talking about Scandinavian countries or Germany and some other countries, that teaching job is given lot of weightage, salary wise, status wise, and everything. So in India, is there a possibility when we are thinking of a 4-year course for like integrated course for teachers, and teacher at that level think that, okay, this is an incentive for me that I will be getting good salary, good status as well, then only the good teachers will come at this particular line. What is your thought?
You are correct, Sharma ji. But fortunately, the policy touches upon this issue and very well. This is one of the doable part of the policy. First, by bringing in 4-year integrated course of B.Ed, only seriously interested person will join B.Ed. Right now, as you rightly said, only when he doesn't get anything anywhere, he joins a B.Ed class and becomes a teacher. Now, after class 12, he'll have to take a call whether he wants to become a teacher and then join the B.Ed. So that way, the policy does its job very well. You will not have teachers by default. You will have teachers by choice. And secondly, there is a lot of effort to provide scholarship and get good people in the policy. They say scholarship shall be given to encourage people to join this profession. Now, as far as salaries are concerned, let me tell you, in India, in villages, teachers are the best paid people. The government pays them very well. The salary is very good. It's not that the salary is bad. No other person in the village has that salary which the teacher has in the village, and he can live comfortably. So I don't think money is a problem. The problem is that there also they come by default instead of making a conscious choice. Now the policy, because I say that there are certain portions of the policy which are eminently doable, they are practicable, and I think the initial focus should be on these areas of teacher. Each aspect of teacher mentioned here is eminently doable, does not require too much of an investment, and this can happen. And if that happens, I think largely the education problem of the country will be sorted out.
Thank you, sir. Wonderful answer. Sir, I will combine two questions here and discuss with you. First and foremost, big question is, there are so many colleges which has grown like mushroom, which are called as distance colleges, where people who are working, they are joining for various distance courses and getting the distance degree. And the government of Qatar is not in favor of this distance degree. Whether this distance degree will help to fetch the government jobs? This is first question. And second question is about 3-language formula in the new education policy.
See, first of all, the distance learning has its disadvantages, but it would be wrong to say that distance learning should be dispensed with. Distance learning is for those people who cannot afford or do not have access to physical learning. That's why you have distance learning. And it is basically meant for those people. So it may not be appropriate to dump it lock, stock, and barrel. It depends on the capacities built in an individual who undergoes that training. There are some people are good enough, they're smart enough to learn without attending a regular physical class. They can learn through distance learning. So we can't actually rule it out totally, but I think focus will have to continue on the physical training because it has many other advantages. Distance training has many, many disadvantages. As far as the 3-language formula is concerned, I think this is nothing new. This has been there for donkey's years, and it has not been mandated by the central government. So states like Tamil Nadu still have this 2-language formula. So it will continue the same way. There'll be a lot of heated debate. We love debate in this country. We like to debate everything. It has worked the way it has worked earlier. It will continue to be worked now. There'll be a lot of heated debates, but I don't think it's going to change much. Wherever people or states can afford or can run through 3-language formula, as most of the states are doing, they will do it. Some states like Tamil Nadu may not do it. They will not do it. I don't think heavens will fall, nor does the policy say that you impose 3-language formula on anybody. In fact, policy doesn't impose anything on anybody. It's basically an agglomeration of ideas. It's basically ideas being articulated. Now the government orders will determine what is mandated and what is suggested. That only time will take.
Yes, that is because three language formula, the parents and teachers and the schools were a little bit apprehensive that what will happen in three. But you have given a very
No,
very
no,
correct
Sharmaji.
perspective.
Sharmaji, the apprehension is not on three language formula. The apprehension is on mother tongue education uh, from class 1 to 5.
Correct,
That is
correct,
agitating. Three
correct.
language formula is nothing new. The agitation in most of the school is because the policy says that the child would be taught in mother tongue, the medium shall be mother tongue from class 1 to 5. This creates a bit of a problem. However, in principle, the philosophy is absolutely correct because the comprehension, understanding of a child is much better in the language that is spoken at home. But practically, it's going to be nightmarish for the schools because number of classes will have multiple mother tongues sitting there. So one child may have Telugu, the other may have, especially in schools like where you are teaching, there would be multiple. Someone would know
I guess
have mother tongue as Urdu, someone would have Malayalam. No, what? How are you going to teach? And secondly, even if it is uniform, you have been teaching, say, in English. Now you'll have to get teachers to teach him in Malayalam. Now
correct.
this will require throwing away the previous teacher, getting a new teacher, and competent enough to teach. Where is the money coming? How are you going to train them? So there are going to be very many practical problems. Theoretically, it's a very good idea. This is something which is engaging the attention of a lot of schools. And my suggestion to them is don't worry about it. The policy does not say it will be implemented tomorrow. Wait for government orders, how it rolls out, and then sit down and discuss. My suggestion to you and your organization also is await government orders. Once the government orders come, then pick up each segment. And I'd like to share with you, as on the at the ages of Nexus of Good, we are starting a series of webinars on new education policy. The first one is on 27th of August. I'll tell you, you may advise your teachers to participate or your principals to participate. The
Sure.
Secretary School Education, Anita Garwal, will also be addressing. Director NCRT will also be there. The first is a curtain raiser. Then we will go to every segment of the policy, and in subsequent webinars, we're going to discuss at length how do you implement each provision of the policy. So our job in Nexus of Good will be to help schools to understand the policy and to implement it in letter and spirit, learning from such schools which have already done or are doing it in the process of doing it. That's the nexus we are talking of, learning from the good work happening elsewhere. And I would invite all of you for the 27th of August. I'll give you the details. Do attend this webinar and subsequent webinars to understand the detailed nuances of education policy and to get some guidance about implementing this policy.
I was actually coming to that question only after doing that. Sir, another question is that now class 3 level, class 5 level, and class 8 level, they will be doing the NEC Parak. They have given the name. And then schools are also thinking that maybe the Cbse and other boards will come with a semester system of examination, which seems very good. But conducting such kind of examinations, boards getting ready, or it's just kind of aspiration of
No, I'm surprised. I'm surprised. I'm unable to understand this because on the one hand, the policy focuses on assessment, yet it talks about examinations. Now, there is a difference between assessment and examination. In examination, you study for questions and you answer them. Now, first, it is not advisable to have exams and put that pressure on the child. It would be better to keep assessing him. Assessment requires a different technique. Examination is totally different. I'm surprised why they're talking in terms of class 3, 5, 8, and 10 and 12 examination. First, it is impractical. And second, the boards will be stretched. They're finding it difficult to hold class 10 and 12 exam. You're asking that agency, which should totally focus on these two exams, to conduct another 3 exams. I think we are in for some trouble there. My suggestion would be that focus should be on assessment because that's where you assess the competencies of a child and you are able to improve it. Now, it's the methodology for assessing competence is different from that what happens in the examination, where you have a time frame, you ask them to write an answer, and in that 3 hours, he somehow vomits something out and you give marks to him. I am not too much in favor of such examination through boards, but I would certainly be in favor of assessments.
very correct, sir. Mr. Shaukat, you have some question?
Sir, last question, I think so, from my side. And sir, a new policy is telling 50 hours of teachers training mandatory for all the teachers. No doubt it is very good. But who will do this training? First point. And second point is, if at all training has to be done, it has to be from grassroots level. It should start from KG and it should go on. So second one, and the third point, even school leaders should get 50 hours of training. So all these trainings, who will fund, who will do, and when it will be done, and where is the time? These are the series of questions.
I think fundamentally there is a requirement of training. Fundamentally, these many hours are required. The problem is how do you make it happen? First of all, I think so far all the training was not done on scientific basis. They were target fixed, and every teacher and teachers were sent to training. So there were cases where a single teacher was getting trained throughout the year, and some other teachers were not doing it. Given that, Rajasthan government started a web-based system which has now been used by the central government to set up a portal called Diksha portal. I think some of you should have a look at Diksha portal. It's a very vibrant portal. It has many features, but one of the features is providing or determining training requirement of each teacher. That's very important. Before you start training him, you must understand what is the requirement of that teacher. What does he require to be trained? That is one. So once that is done, then of course, again, the same problem. What is the infrastructure that is available for training so many teachers? That is something which needs to be fleshed out. What is the money backing to it? I mean, I keep going back to 6% of GDP because whereas the objective is very laudable, rolling it out would require enormous amount of funds. Those funds should come right now. I don't know whether you suffer from all that. In India, salaries, paying salaries to the teacher, regular salaries, is a serious problem. And we are talking in terms of more expenditure. So someone will have to live down at the ground reality. You know, unfortunately, in this committee that was constituted to formulate the policy, there was no practitioner in it. There was no principal, there was no teacher. So they didn't understand what the ground reality was. So what the policy says is eminently desirable. But whether it's practicable or not, only time will tell. I have my serious apprehensions on certain fronts. So if I were there as school education secretary, I would start with doables first. Make two parts of the policy, something which does not require so much fund, get moving. Rest, make out a plan, await for funds to come. If they come, well and good. If they don't come, so be it. But instead of criticizing the whole policy, it would be better to look at those aspects of policy which can be implemented without too much of fund requirement. There are indeed a number of aspects. So those should be implemented forthwith. Others, I think the planning should be done, detailed plans should be made out, and await and wait for the money to come
in. That's a very vital thing one must think of, and then you raised one very interesting question. So, sir, what should be your message particularly to teaching community and principals to get ready for putting the throttle on from the next year onward, and how do you suggest that the schools and principals should go with this change?
Okay, so my first suggestion, request would be that the future of the country depends on you, because you are training the future of this country. So you have enormous responsibility on your shoulders. That is one. Number two, you cannot afford to be thinking negatively. Because if you are not positive, if you don't convey positive energy, then what will happen to the children? Irrespective of the set of circumstances, I think you should remain positive. And that is the energy that you have to disseminate. You have to convey to children that problems are a way of life. There are a number of things over which you have no control, but there are a number of people who are doing phenomenal work despite these problems. Let us take inspiration from them. In fact, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant precisely conveys this message. It conveys the message that irrespective of the set of circumstances, you can do a lot of good to people around you. Why? Because many people are doing a lot of good to people around. There are more than 50 civil servants that I mentioned in the book who've done phenomenal work despite these difficult set of circumstances. Same goes to teachers. There's so many teachers I really admire. I didn't have time, I would have named them. Fantastic work they're doing. They are doing the same work in the given set of circumstances. If they could do it, why can't I do it? It's a question of where you're looking for inspiration. There are fabulous teachers around. We should look at inspiration from them and do the best that we can. We don't have any control over the results. But we must continue to do our duty and enjoy the moments that we are in.
I was lucky to listen a few of the stories of rural areas where teachers are doing amazing work, and I tried to replicate it in my school, and I've suggested it to various people. One very valid question we are asking, sir. You have written on ethical dilemma of civil servant, and related to that, we are looking for a wonderful book to guide all teachers, and those people means next should be on education. And
No, see,
if,
I must humbly submit that my experience in education is very limited. As a civil servant, I spent 38 years, so I had some experience. But in education, it's very limited. But nonetheless, my next book would have more parts of education. This book also has 4 to 5 chapters on education. So, and I touch upon certain aspects, some critical aspects of education. I hope some of you find time to read it.
Sir, amount of kilometers you have traveled to know about education, no other secretary would have done that.
No, I loved it. I enjoyed traveling.
And just I will request, sir, that I can tell the teachers and attendees just to, if they want to follow, and I will certainly recommend that you follow the hashtag Nexus of Good, and you will find amazing positive stories from all sectors, particularly whatever you want, and basically coming from various fields, various dimensions in India, which will always give you a positive outlook and will certainly inspire you. So I recommend that you follow. Very simple is hashtag Nexus of Good, you write, and you will find on LinkedIn and Facebook and everywhere you will find this. It was an amazing talk, and I will request Sayed.
Even I want my teachers to please read Ethical Dilemma of Civil Servant. It is a wonderful book, and if anybody requires that book, please let me know also. We'll try to arrange that book. Sir, lastly, I'm sorry I'm asking you last question because I saw in the chat box many questions. Many people asked this last question. I was saying many questions were there in chat box. And the question is, when will be this education policy implemented?
See, it will, I can't say when it will be, but it will be implemented through various government orders, which should start coming forthwith. The policy itself says that certain aspects will go up to 2030, 2025. But I think the related government orders should start issuing very soon. And that will set the ball rolling for implementation of the education policy.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you,
sir. So formally, I would like to thank each one of you who attended this webinar. First of all, I'll thank respected Anil Swarup, sir. I'll share my experience. First, when I met Anil Swarup, sir, in Bangalore airport, since I was the organizer of Bangalore conference, and I went to pick myself and Sharma Bhaijan went to pick Anil Swarup, sir. Believe me, when I saw sir, I was so amazed by seeing his look and personality. And later, he walked down to the car parking, and I was bitterly running behind him. So the pace at which he was walking, so it made me to run behind him. So he is such a wonderful and so active gentleman. At this age also, after his retirement, he has written 2 wonderful books. And I request sir to write again, as Sharma sir told, write on teachers also. Inshallah, sir will write on teachers in future book. Sir, with the bottom of our heart, each one of us, myself, Sharma sir, and our president, sir, Dr. Hassan Kuni MP, thank you for your valuable presence and guiding us top to bottom about education policy. Looking forward to have you once in Doha-Qatar also, sir. So thank you for attending this webinar, sir. Thank you for spending your valuable time with us. Secondly, I thank my school president, Dr. Hassan Kuni MP, who was here. And even though he had some problems with the internet, he could take private connection and finally join this join this webinar. Thank you very much, our president, sir. And third, I'll thank my friend, because in friendship, there is no thanks and no sorry. But I have to thank my friend AP Sharma sir for moderating and being with me always. So thank you, AP Sharma sir. And I thank all the participants who are here. I can see there are 300 who attended today in the participant group, and more than 200 they attended through YouTube as well as Facebook. Thanks each one of you, each one of them. Especially I thank all the principals who attended, vice principals who attended, all the teachers who attended. Now this is 21st century. We have to move ahead with new challenges, new life. Things should go on, life should go on, show must go on. So we are here to teach, learn, unlearn for our children. So good luck to everyone. Thank you once again, sir. Thank you one and all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was very nice listening to you.
Thank you very much
for such kind of instances. Thank you so much, sir. Have a wonderful
you.
day. And
God bless you. God
Thank
bless
you,
you.
sir.
God
Thank
bless
you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. God bless you.
Sir, can I wind up the meeting, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, please move.
Okay, thank you.